Here we are, and I'm still crunching on my lunch. All right, here we are, and I'm Emily Windsor Craig. And I don't know if you've ever experienced a thought ball, or an instant download of all of a sudden you just see the whole thing. And there's no way to capture it, there's no way to write it down. You're just going, oh. Okay. But it's important for us to realize that this conflict between the deep state, which has a history, and that's what I'm working on, the history of the deep state, versus the people who still hold the Constitution and the behavioral principles invoked in the Constitution as holy and sacred. This conflict has a deep history, a very deep history. And due to the secrecy policies of the elites going back 500 years, we the people have not been apprised of the history of the conflict between mercenary ethics, the acceptance of treachery, piracy, and perfidy, versus the ethic of Lyra, that your leaders are your servants, that you always tell the truth, you only tell the truth, that he who is without, he who is faithful in what is little, least is also faithful in much. Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. You know, I'm reading off the Christian ethic, which is also the Essene ethic and part of the Sikh ethic. These 2 points of view have been engaging in conflict, but the actual history of how they derived has not been allowed to surface. Now, I don't know how long you've been online, but what I've been following online, there's the flat earth versus spinning ball. There's the Tartaria hidden history. There's the military industrial complex. There's Operation Paperclip. Okay, there's Albert Pike's calling his directive in 1871 for 3 world wars. What was that about? Okay. And it's just a huge quantity of stuff all at once. And so I'm working to put that into a simple set of bucket lists. But the conflict between the present claims that are being made by the Congress, the mainstream media, and the PNAC, Rhino, neocon faction, that this election was held in accord with law against the realization that huge quantities of fraud and irregularities existed without any official acknowledgement. Okay, this is a conflict that isn't going to go away anytime soon. And it is merely the latest manifestation of the 2 philosophies, the one mercenary and the other Lyran, that have been going on for about 600,000 years. Now, I'm just kind of hitting the high points for you today to let you know that this will be my work over the next weeks, particularly up to the inauguration, whoever they think they're going to inaugurate. Because for my part, I don't want the deep state, the military industrial complex, PNAC, neocons, and rhinos running this country. The left the people who are basically left out of society. I don't hate them. I'm not as angry at them because they're broken. They're broken people. And they don't have positive methods. They don't have means. They don't have ways and procedures for fixing problems except to act out like a 2-year-old kicking and screaming on the floor. Okay. They only act out. That's their only method. And that's the Frankfurt School, and that's Saul Alinsky, and that's part of the protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. Okay. So what I'm confronting now is the quote, right-wing, imperialist defense contractors, big tech, big pharma. Big pharma, glyphosate just as much as 5G. I'm going to confront the history of the military-industrial complex so that we can actually identify who's who. We have to identify who's who. Now, President Trump has accumulated lawful indictments on a number of people who are going to be charged with treason, sedition, influence peddling, money laundering, charity fraud, pedophilia, the abuse of children. There are a bunch of indictments that have been written and are waiting on the circumstances to try those indictments at Gitmo. And so that's part of the situation we're dealing with, is when are those cases going to come up? If the left and the deep state have anything to say about it, those cases will never come up, because those cases are the basis for the current denial of all crimes in this past election. Those cases, those are the people who have gone to DC and said, there's nothing wrong with the election. You're all just making stuff up, okay? All right. This work has to be done, and I'm doing it. So today is the first short, abbreviated table of contents, okay, for laying out how this conflict happened. And tomorrow I'll look at its earliest manifestations, which are not in the Bible. Jason, stop naming, blaming, and shaming. You're simply out of line. Okay, just stop it. The earliest iteration of this conflict was the annihilation of the Lyrans by the Draconi. And after that, there was a treaty called the Elanu Treaty, which I have quoted many times, which sets out the difference between superior people and inferior people and stuff like that. Okay, so that goes back about 600,000 years. But then, what was the configuration of this world when that was going on? That's the question. Because, as you know, if you go down to Antarctica, particularly the ocean there, is not in any greater motion than the ocean anywhere else. Okay. The water at the southern boundary is not spinning off. Now, if the water's not spinning off, what's spinning? That's our first. So our first problem is, what is the ground we're walking on? And who says what about that? And then from there, we get into Tartaria. What was Tartaria that spread its civilization all over the world? Okay. And after Tartaria, we get into what really happened after the Dark Ages, when the world began to wake up and pull itself together. How did that happen? Because we have a history of that too. Okay. And after that came the Masonic Renaissance of the 18th century and the attempt to create a republic that would stick. But the fighting was already going on. Okay. And after that, in the 19th century, was a major mud flood reset. Okay. And toward the latter part of the 19th century, Albert Pike, the Grand Commander of the Scottish Rite Masons, declared and directed that 3 world wars be staged. You see how this all just flows. And the first of those world wars was held under the reign of George V, my grandfather. Okay. That's what pulls me into this. All right. We have a history of treachery, piracy, and perfidy going back a long time, which the deep state clings to and lives by, which is what they're doing today in the mainstream media. And all of this has to be brought open so that we, the people, will know how to proceed from here. Because without the truth, we don't know how to proceed. And the mainstream media and the social media are literally sensationalizing what is false and culling and censoring what's true. And we cannot let that continue. So this has been Emily Windsor Craig, and this is an introduction to the new series on human history. Thank you for coming by. And Jason, you mind your manners.